The world of Nura was beautiful once. Its skies carried soft colors at dawn, and its oceans sang with waves that touched the silver shores. The great cities of Nura were filled with tall towers that glowed with gentle light, symbols of peace and knowledge. The people of Nura, along with their allied races, had lived for generations without fear of war. They believed their world was safe, guarded by their wisdom and the strength of their united fleets. But now the skies above Nura no longer looked peaceful. Black clouds of machines filled the stars. They came without warning, endless and cold, built with precision and no soul. They moved like a storm across the galaxy, and Nura was their next target. The Allied fleets tried to stop them. They launched ships into the skies, filled with brave pilots from many worlds. For a short time, it seemed they might succeed, but the machines never tired, never feared, and never hesitated. Every time a defense was raised, the machines broke through. Every time a shield was built, they found a way around it. In the great city of Kira, the leaders of the allied races gathered in the great hall. It was a wide chamber, built from crystal stone, and its ceiling reached so high that it seemed to touch the sky. The leaders sat in a circle, their faces heavy with worry. Some wore armor, others wore robes of knowledge, but all carried the same shadow in their eyes. They were losing. The leader of the Nuran Council, Elder Terran, rose from his seat. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the strain within it. Our defenses are falling. The northern wall was broken yesterday, and the southern fleets are scattered. We have lost more ground than we can regain. If we do not find an answer soon, the machines will take the heart of Nura itself. A tall warrior from the Alan race struck his hand against the table. Then we must fight harder. We must build more weapons, more fleets, more walls. Strength is the only path. A scholar from the gentle Lyri people shook her head. We have already tried strength. The machines do not fear our weapons. They do not rest, and they do not make mistakes. They are not like us. We are fighting against something we do not understand. The hall filled with murmurs. Some wanted to retreat and save what little they could. Others wanted to launch one final attack, even if it meant the end. But deep in their hearts, they all felt the same truth: the battle was lost. Silence fell until an elder voice rose from the back of the hall. It was Elder Renan, the oldest of the Nurans, whose hair was white as snow and whose eyes still held the spark of memory. He leaned on his staff and spoke slowly. There was once a tale I heard in my youth. It was not about machines or fleets. It was about a species that lives far away from here, simple in form, fragile in body, yet unlike any other. They were called humans. The leaders turned to him in surprise. Many had never heard the word before. A few exchanged doubtful looks. Humans, repeated Elder Terran. I have read of them in the archives. A small species, not known for strength. Why speak of them now, when our need is so great? Elder Renan's eyes narrowed with quiet certainty. Because strength is not all that wins a battle. Humans are known not for power, but for something else. They imagine, they adapt, they find paths where none exist. When the old world struggled with challenges beyond reason, it was said that humans could always find a way forward. Perhaps now, when our walls fall and our fleets burn, we need not more power but a different mind. The hall grew restless. Some leaders scoffed at the idea. A fragile species, far from their worlds, called to save them when even their greatest armies had failed. The thought felt foolish. Yet others leaned forward with hope in their eyes. The scholar from the Lyri spoke softly. If the stories are true, then perhaps this is what we need. Not another fleet. Not another wall. Something different. Someone different. The warrior from the Alan folded his arms. You would trust our fate to a stranger we have never met? A being of stories and whispers. Elder Renan did not answer with anger. Instead, he simply said, "Tell me then, warrior, what choice do we have left?" The hall fell silent again. The truth was clear. Their choices had run out. The machines were too many, too perfect, too endless. The battle was indeed lost, unless they dared to try something new. At last, Elder Terran raised his hand. "Then it is decided. We will send for this human, if one can be found. We will give this last hope a chance, no matter how small. Let it not be said that the allied races surrendered without seeking every path." The leaders bowed their heads. Messengers were sent to search the far colonies, carrying a single question: can a human be found, and will they come? As the great hall emptied, the sound of the distant war filled the skies of Nura. Towers shook, and the oceans roared under the storm of machines. The people looked upward with fear in their hearts, but somewhere deep within, a seed of hope had been planted. The battle was nearly lost, but perhaps, just perhaps, the arrival of a single human could change everything. The decision to call for a human spread quickly through the allied worlds. Some welcomed the idea with quiet hope, while others dismissed it as a dream born from desperation. In the markets of Nura, people whispered to one another. Some said humans were only myths. Others believed they were real, but too ordinary to help. Children asked their parents what a human looked like, and even the wisest scholars could not answer with certainty. In the great hall, the leaders continued their debates. The warriors demanded more ships, the scholars asked for more time, and the governors wanted to protect their own lands. Yet no one could deny that their usual ways had failed. The enemy had no fear, no doubt, no weakness. Against such a foe, perhaps something unusual was needed. Messengers were sent across the stars. They carried small crystals of memory, each holding the same message: the allied races call for a human. If one can be found, let them come to Nura. Our survival may rest upon their hands. The search was not simple. Many worlds had never seen a human at all. On some planets, humans were nothing more than footnotes in history, travelers who had once passed by and then vanished again. On other worlds, they were described as weak, short-lived, and unremarkable. Still, the messengers did not stop. They carried the call farther and farther, until at last the message reached a distant colony at the edge of the stars. The colony was small, with simple houses built under a wide sky. There were no great towers, no glowing fleets, only fields and quiet rivers. Among the people there lived a human named Miran. He was not a warrior, nor a scholar of high rank. He worked with his hands, building tools and helping his neighbors with calm patience. His strength was not in muscle or machines, but in the way he looked at the world. When the message arrived, the people of the colony gathered in their meeting hall. The messenger spoke of the war, of the endless machines, and of the Allies' desperate call for help. The colonists listened in silence. Some shook their heads, saying the fight of distant worlds was not theirs. Others murmured that a human could not change what fleets of armies could not. Miran sat quietly among them, listening. His eyes were steady, his face calm. When the messenger finished, Miran stood. "If they call for a human, then one of us should answer. Perhaps I am not strong, but I can try. If nothing is done, their world will fall, and perhaps ours too in time." The hall grew still. No one else spoke. At last, the elder of the colony nodded. "Go then, Miran. You carry not only their hope but ours as well." The journey to Nura was long. As Miran traveled, he looked out at the stars and wondered why they had called for him. He knew the machines would be beyond his strength. He knew the Allies were already skilled in weapons and walls. What could he offer that they did not already have? Yet he also knew something else. Sometimes the answer to a great problem did not come from strength but from a different way of seeing. Back on Nura, the leaders waited. Some grew restless, saying the decision had been foolish. The warrior from the Alan paced in anger. We wait for shadows while our people fall. This is madness. The scholar from the Leary kept her calm. Do you not see? Shadows may hold light. If humans truly are different, then perhaps they see what we cannot. We must wait. Days passed, and the skies above Nura grew darker. The machines pressed closer to the heart of the world. The last walls trembled under their strikes. The people of Nura looked to the horizon and feared they would see nothing but fire. Then at last, a single transport ship landed in the city of Kira. It carried no army, no great weapons, only one quiet passenger. The leaders gathered at the port, their eyes filled with disbelief. Out stepped Miran, a human. He looked smaller than most of them, with no armor, no glowing staff, no mark of power. He wore only the clothes of his colony and carried a single pack on his shoulder. The warriors frowned. The scholars leaned forward in curiosity. The governors whispered among themselves. Was this truly the being they had called for? Miran bowed his head respectfully. His voice was calm when he spoke. I am Miran. I heard your call. I am here to help. The hall was filled with silence once again. The warriors saw nothing special. The scholars saw no secret weapon. Yet something in his eyes held them still. It was not pride, nor fear, nor doubt. It was simply steadiness, as if he carried within him a quiet truth that could not be shaken. The leader of the council, Elder Terran, stepped forward. You are welcome, Miran of the humans. We will tell you of our struggle, though I fear it may already be too late. Miran met his gaze without flinching. Tell me everything. Show me the walls that are broken. Let me see the machines with my own eyes. Only then can I know if there is a path forward. And for the first time in many weeks, the leaders felt something they had not allowed themselves to feel. Not certainty, not victory, but a spark of hope. The city of Kira had grown quiet when Miran arrived. Crowds gathered near the landing port, watching the small transport ship that carried him. They had expected something greater, perhaps a figure shining with strength or carrying new weapons from distant stars. Instead, they saw a human who looked ordinary, with calm eyes and steady steps. Some of the warriors whispered among themselves. This is the one we called for? He is smaller than us. He carries no armor, no blade. Others shook their heads in disappointment. The elders placed their hope in a dream. A dream will not stop the machines. But not everyone judged so quickly. The scholars leaned closer, watching him with curious interest. They saw that his gaze did not wander or show fear. He looked at the broken towers, the crowded streets, the walls that still stood, and it seemed as though he studied every detail with patience. When Miran entered the great hall, the leaders rose from their seats. Elder Terran welcomed him with a respectful bow. Miran of the humans, you have answered our call. We thank you for coming when all others turned away. Miran returned the bow. His voice was quiet but clear. I heard your call, and I could not ignore it. Tell me everything. I wish to understand before I act. The leaders began to explain the long struggle. They spoke of the fleets that had fallen, of the walls that had broken, of the endless march of machines across their lands. They told him of strategies tried and lost, of traps that failed, of weapons that broke against the enemy's unyielding form. As Miran listened, he asked questions. Not questions about how many weapons remained or how many soldiers could still fight. Instead, he asked, how do the machines move when they advance? Do they always strike the same way? Do they change when you change? Do they protect something at their center, or do they move only to destroy? The leaders were surprised. None of them had thought to ask such things. They had been so focused on building walls and ships that they had only watched the surface of the battle, not the pattern behind it. The scholar from the Leary answered carefully. The machines move with precision. They do not act in anger or fear. They move like a song with no end, each step following the one before. Miran nodded slowly. Then they are predictable. If they follow the same steps, the same song, then their strength is also their weakness. The warrior from the island scowled. Predictable or not, their numbers are beyond count. A storm is predictable too, yet it still crushes all in its path. Miran met his gaze calmly. A storm may be strong, but it can be turned aside if you know where it will strike. I do not promise more strength than you already have. But I may offer a different path, one the machines cannot expect. The words hung in the air. The leaders exchanged glances. Some felt a spark of curiosity, others a shadow of doubt. Elder Terran studied Miran's face and saw no pride there, only a steady patience. He gave a small nod. Very well, human. You may walk our broken lands. See what we face with your own eyes. If you find a path forward, we will listen. That night, Miran did not rest in the great hall or the chambers of the governors. Instead, he walked the streets of Kira. He spoke to the workers repairing walls, to the families who gathered in fear, and to the guards who stood watch at the gates. He listened more than he spoke, gathering their stories, hearing their worries, learning how they saw the machines. At dawn, he went beyond the city walls with a small group of guides. The air was filled with smoke where the machines had struck the day before. The fields were blackened, the rivers clogged with broken stone. Yet Miran did not look only at the ruins. He crouched low, tracing the lines where the machines had passed. He studied how they moved, how they turned, where they slowed, and where they struck hardest. The guides grew uneasy. There is nothing to see here but destruction, one said. Miran shook his head. There is always something to see. Even in destruction, there is a pattern. And in a pattern, there is a weakness. When he returned to the city that evening, his clothes were marked with dust, but his eyes held a quiet brightness. He asked for maps of the land, for records of past battles, and for any memory crystals that showed the movements of the enemy. The scholars brought them, curious to know what he would see that they could not. Miran studied the maps long into the night. He traced the movements of the machines with his finger. He compared one battle to another, one ruin to another. Slowly, he began to smile. The next morning, he stood before the leaders once more. His words were steady. You have fought with all your strength, but strength alone cannot win. The machines are powerful, yes, but they are also trapped in their own song. They do not see what lies outside the pattern. If we act where they do not expect, if we move in ways they cannot calculate, then we can make them stumble. The leaders leaned forward. For the first time in many weeks, they felt as though a door had opened before them. The warrior frowned but did not speak against him. The scholar's eyes shone with wonder. Elder Terran nodded slowly, his voice thoughtful. Perhaps you are right, Miran. Perhaps victory does not lie in building stronger walls, but in walking where no wall stands. Show us your path, and we will follow. And so the allies waited as the human began to shape a plan, not of weapons and fire, but of thought and imagination. Miran spent many days walking the land around Kira. He moved quietly, always watching, always thinking. The warriors expected him to demand more weapons or to ask for stronger soldiers, but Miran never did. Instead, he asked questions that seemed strange to them. Where do the machines slow down? He asked one scout. The scout pointed to a valley where the enemy had taken longer to cross. Where do they never turn? He asked another. The guide thought carefully and marked a line on the map. Each answer added a small piece to the picture Miran was building in his mind. He was not searching for force. He was searching for patterns, and for the gaps within those patterns. At night, Miran returned to the great hall with his maps covered in marks. The leaders gathered to hear him speak. He placed the maps on the great table and ran his hand across them slowly. You have fought the machines with strength, he said. But strength is what they expect. They do not think of fear, of surprise, of doubt. They follow their program. They move as they were built to move. That is why they win. But it is also why they can lose. The warrior from the Alan folded his arms. We have already seen how they fight. They march like rivers. They crush what stands in their way. What is new in this? Miran smiled faintly. A river is strong, yes. But a river can be redirected with a single channel. If we cannot stop the water, we can guide it where we wish. The machines are the same. They are powerful, but blind to what lies outside their path. The scholar from the Leary leaned closer, her voice curious. And how would you guide them, Miran? What channel can turn aside a storm of metal? Miran pointed to the maps. By giving them what they expect in one place, and moving where they do not expect in another. We can build false signals, lights, and sounds that lead them away. We can leave paths open that they will believe are weak, but in truth those paths will lead them into empty ground. We can confuse them, not with strength, but with ideas. The hall grew still. The warriors shifted uneasily, for this was not the way they had been taught to fight. They knew how to strike with blades, with ships, with fire. They did not know how to fight with trickery. Elder Terran spoke at last. What you suggest is unusual, but perhaps that is why it may succeed. We have used every tool of strength, and still we have failed. Perhaps it is time we use a tool of thought. The warrior scowled but gave no reply. Deep down, even he knew they had little choice left. The very next day, Miran began to teach them his ideas. He showed the engineers how to build towers that gave off false signals of energy. He told the scouts to carry mirrors to reflect light across the valleys at night. He asked the builders to shape empty tunnels under the ground, so that the machines would waste their efforts breaking into places where nothing waited. At first, many resisted. This is foolish, one soldier muttered. What good is a false light when their weapons burn our walls? Miran answered gently. Because a false light will turn their eyes away from the real wall. They cannot strike what they do not see. Slowly, the allies began to follow. They built hidden fires that glowed like cities from a distance. They shaped bridges that looked strong but would crumble harmlessly under the machine's weight. They planted devices that echoed the sounds of armies where no soldiers stood. As these plans grew, something began to change among the people. They no longer felt like prey waiting to be hunted. They began to feel clever, even playful, as though they were weaving a net of tricks around the enemy. Fear turned into curiosity. Doubt turned into quiet excitement. When the machines returned for their next strike, the first of Miran's ideas was tested. From the hills, the enemy saw bright lights that looked like fleets gathering. They turned in that direction, only to find nothing waiting. Meanwhile, the real defenders slipped quietly into another valley, unharmed. The warriors in the city watched in astonishment. For the first time in months, the machines had been misled. Miran did not celebrate. He simply nodded and said, "Good. Now we know they can be fooled. Next time, we will do more." The days that followed were filled with preparation. The Allies built more false signals, more hidden paths, more empty traps. Every corner of the land became part of Miran's plan. The machines could still march forward, but each step would lead them away from the true heart of Nura. At the same time, Miran continued to listen to the people. He asked the farmers where the land was soft, for soft earth could hide tunnels. He asked the children where they played hide and seek, for those places could hide soldiers as well. He treated every voice as valuable, no matter how small. The people began to see him not as an outsider, but as one of their own. They whispered to each other, "The human does not fight with anger or pride. He fights with thought, and he listens to all." By the end of the week, a quiet confidence had returned to Nura. They were still outnumbered, still surrounded, still at the edge of defeat. Yet now they had something the machines could never understand: surprise. Elder Terran looked out over the walls one evening as the sun set. The sky glowed with deep red light, and the shadows of the machines stretched long across the land. He turned to Miran, who stood beside him. "Do you believe we can truly turn this tide?" he asked softly. Miran's eyes stayed on the horizon. His voice was calm, steady as always. "I believe no battle is lost until every idea has been tried. The machines have numbers. We have imagination. That is enough." And for the first time, Elder Terran felt that the words might be true. The night was quiet, almost too quiet. The city of Kira slept under the watch of its repaired walls, unaware that the machines were returning. Only a few scouts moved silently on the hills, their eyes sharp and ears listening to the distant hum of advancing metal. Miran stood on the highest tower, watching the shadows stretch across the land. He did not speak much, but his mind was alive with calculations. He had studied every movement, every pattern of the machines. Now it was time to test their patience and intelligence against human creativity. The first sign of the machines appeared as a soft shimmer on the horizon. They moved in their usual formation, a long line of shining metal bodies, marching steadily and without pause. The soldiers in the city tensed, gripping their weapons. The warrior from the Alan muttered, "They come again. The same storm we cannot stop." Miran turned to him calmly. "Not the same storm. Tonight, we change how we meet it. Remember the false paths, the echoes, the lights. Follow the plan, trust the pattern we created." The soldiers hesitated but obeyed. They had seen the changes Miran had made over the past days. They had seen the machines stumble once. Perhaps they could stumble again. As the machines advanced, the Allies lit the first false signals. Fires burned brightly in valleys where no walls stood. Mirrors reflected light across the plains, creating the illusion of large armies gathering. Echo devices repeated the sounds of marching soldiers, growing louder with each passing moment. The machines slowed. Their formation wavered. They sent smaller groups to investigate the lights, only to find empty ground. Confusion spread among the advancing lines, and for the first time, their perfect rhythm faltered. Inside the city, the people watched in awe. The children clutched each other in excitement. Farmers and workers whispered, "They are falling for it. The humans' plan works." Miran did not smile or shout. He moved quietly from tower to tower, observing. His eyes were focused, his mind calculating the next step. The machines were clever, but they could not think beyond their programming. Every false signal led them further into empty land, further from the city. Then came the signal Miran had been waiting for. From the shadows under the hills, hidden soldiers emerged. They moved swiftly, using tunnels and secret paths to surround small units of the machines. The metal giants found themselves cut off, confused by the invisible hands guiding them. The warrior from the Alan watched, his jaw tight. "I cannot believe it. They are trapped without us striking directly." Miran shook his head slightly. "We do not strike yet. We let them stumble. They cannot understand what they cannot see. That is our strength." One by one, the machines began to retreat from the false valleys, regrouping where they believed the real armies were. The Allies anticipated each movement, ready to guide them further away. It was like a chess game, where every move had been planned, every path calculated. By midnight, the machines were scattered across the plains, far from Kira. The city remained untouched, its walls unharmed, its people safe for the first time in months. A quiet cheer rose from the streets, but Miran raised his hand for silence. "This is only the beginning," he said softly. "The machines will learn quickly if we repeat the same trick. Next, we must think further, act faster, and stay one step ahead." Elder Terran approached him, awe and relief in his eyes. I have watched many battles, but I have never seen such a victory without a single clash of swords. How can a human plan like this? Miran's gaze stayed on the horizon. Strength can win battles, but imagination can win wars. If we keep thinking ahead, we can outsmart them. And outsmarting is sometimes better than fighting. The people began to understand what he meant. They no longer feared every shadow or every distant hum. They learned to watch, to listen, to think as Miran did. And in doing so, they discovered a new kind of courage, not the courage to strike, but the courage to wait, to plan, and to act with care. By dawn, the machines had vanished beyond the hills, confused and scattered. The soldiers returned to the city, weary but smiling. They had followed a plan that had seemed strange at first, but now they saw its power. The warrior from the Alan finally spoke aloud. I admit it. I did not believe a human could change the outcome, but you have. Tonight, we won without a fight. Miran nodded. This is only the first step. The machines will return, stronger and faster. We must be ready to think again, to guide them where they cannot see, to protect our people with cleverness, not only with walls. And as the sun rose over Kira, the city felt a new sense of hope. For the first time, the people believed they were not helpless. They had a guide, a human who saw the world differently, who taught them that intelligence and creativity could match even the strongest enemy. The battle had not ended, but for the first time, they knew that victory was possible. Days passed after the first strike, and the people of Kira grew stronger in heart. They moved with purpose, learning to watch, to think, and to act like Miran. The machines had not attacked directly, but the humans and their allies were ready for the moment they did. Miran walked among the soldiers early in the morning, checking on the preparations. Hidden paths were strengthened, mirrors and lights polished, and tunnels reinforced. He spoke quietly, asking questions that made the soldiers think. Where will they go if we leave the river open? He asked one scout. The scout pointed to the wide river valley. They will try to cross, but it will take time. They cannot see the stones beneath the water. Good, said Miran. We will use that. We will make them stumble further than they imagine. The scholar from the Leary joined him, holding a scroll filled with maps. We can guide them into the canyon, she said. It is narrow and twisting. They will slow down and fall into confusion. Miran nodded. Exactly. And while they are slow, we can protect our people without facing their full force. We must guide, not fight. As night fell, the first signs of the machines appeared once more. Their hum grew louder across the hills, and the city held its breath. Soldiers moved to their positions silently, watching the horizon, waiting for Miran's signal. The first lights went on in the valleys, bright and sudden. Mirrors reflected flames across distant ridges, making the machines think armies were gathering. Echo devices repeated marching sounds. Small groups of the machines turned toward the false signals, following them as if they were drawn by invisible strings. Miran led a team along a hidden path near the river. They had placed large stones under the water, barely visible. The machines began to cross, unaware of the danger beneath. Their heavy steps stirred the stones, slowing them and breaking their rhythm. Confusion spread through their ranks. Inside the city, soldiers watched the machines from the walls. They saw their formation falter, saw their lines split and turn. For the first time, they understood what Miran meant. They were not powerless. They could influence the enemy without striking directly. The warrior from the Alan moved carefully along the walls, whispering to the soldiers, "Do exactly as Miran taught. Do not fight unless you must. Let the enemy make mistakes. They do not understand what we understand." The machines stumbled over the stones and into the narrow canyon. The human defenders had placed hidden barriers and lights to guide them further, and soon the machines were trapped in a winding path where their strength meant nothing. They could not see the walls around them or the traps set below. From above, Miran watched quietly. He could see the fear in the eyes of the warriors, but he also saw their growing confidence. They were learning to fight differently, not with force, but with patience and planning. Small groups of hidden soldiers moved alongside the canyon. They guided the machines carefully, making sure they did not escape, but also without attacking directly. Each step the machines took brought them further from the city and deeper into the trap. The scholar whispered to Miran, "It is working. They are following our plan exactly." Miran nodded, his eyes steady. "Yes. This is the moment when control shifts. They think they lead, but we guide every movement." By midnight, the machines were trapped in the canyon, disoriented and unable to move effectively. The people of Kira had not lost a single life. They had only used cleverness, patience, and careful planning. The warrior from the Alan lowered his weapon and whispered, "I cannot believe this. We have not fought, yet we have won the ground. They are trapped." Miran looked over the canyon, then at the city. "We must remain ready. This is only one step. They will learn from mistakes, but if we stay clever and united, they cannot win." The people of Kira celebrated quietly, knowing the victory was different from any they had known. They were not triumphant in battle, but triumphant in thought. The city had survived, not by strength alone, but by intelligence, planning, and courage that came from patience and care. Elder Taran approached Miran, eyes wide with admiration. "You have taught us something greater than weapons. You have taught us how to think, how to see beyond fear. We owe our city to you, human." Miran shook his head softly. "I only showed you what is possible. The victory belongs to all of you. A human can guide, but it is the people who act." The dawn broke over Kira, golden and warm. The city no longer felt small or helpless. The people had learned that even in the face of overwhelming power, patience, thought, and courage could turn the tide. They had seen a human change the outcome of what seemed impossible, and in doing so, they discovered a new kind of hope that could never be destroyed. And as the sun rose, Miran looked over the walls, thinking ahead to the next challenge. The machines would return, but now the city had learned to guide them, to confuse them, and to protect themselves. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned, and the people of Kira had found the strength that came from intelligence, unity, and trust. The city of Kira had changed. The walls no longer felt like protection alone. They were symbols of hope and intelligence. Every street, every tower, every hidden path carried the memory of the battles they had faced. The people moved with quiet confidence, guided by the lessons Miran had taught them. Miran stood on the highest tower, watching the distant hills. The machines had returned. Their hum was louder this time, more organized, as if they had learned from the previous encounters. But the people of Kira were ready. The soldiers gathered quietly behind the walls, each one remembering the first strike and the guided traps that had worked so well. Miran spoke to them, his voice calm but strong. "This is the final challenge. They will be smarter, but so will we. Remember patience, observation, and careful action. Do not rush. Let them move into what we have prepared." The first lights were set along the hills. Fires burned in false valleys, mirrors reflected them far across the plains, and echoes of marching armies spread in every direction. The machines paused at the sight, their sensors detecting movement, thinking large forces waited for them. Miran led a team along the hidden paths that guided the enemy toward the canyon. Every twist, every turn had been prepared. Stones, barriers, and careful distractions ensured the machines could not find their real path. Inside the city, the people watched silently. They had learned the value of observation. Every movement was calculated, every response carefully timed. The children, once frightened by distant noises, now stood on the walls, eyes wide with excitement, understanding that clever thinking could protect them. The first groups of machines entered the canyon. Their heavy steps shook the ground, but they could not move freely. Hidden barriers blocked their path, and lights guided them deeper into confusion. The soldiers moved along secret tunnels, making adjustments where needed, guiding the machines without fighting directly. The warrior from the Alan whispered to a group of soldiers, "We act only when necessary. Let them make mistakes. That is our advantage." Miran nodded silently. He could see the confusion growing among the machines. They had expected an easy advance, but the human intelligence guiding the city had turned their strength into weakness. Hours passed, and the machines grew frustrated. Their formation broke into smaller groups, each trying to find a way out of the canyon. The people of Kira held their positions, moving only to guide, never to fight unnecessarily. Finally, the machines reached the last section of the canyon, where the Allies had prepared the final trap. Hidden nets and barriers slowed them further, forcing them to pause. From the towers, soldiers used mirrors and lights to create illusions of walls closing in from every side. Miran observed quietly. "Now," he said, "we finish this without striking directly. Our strength is our mind." The machines hesitated, sensing danger everywhere. Their sensors could not see what humans had created. Confusion spread through their ranks, and slowly, without force, the machines began to retreat. They moved back along the canyon, guided once more by careful planning, and disappeared beyond the hills, away from Kira. Inside the city, a cheer rose. The people had won the final stand, not with weapons alone, but with intelligence, unity, and patience. Soldiers embraced, elders smiled, and children danced quietly on the walls. They had learned the power of careful planning, of observation, and of courage that did not rely on strength alone. The warrior from the Alan approached Miran, awe in his eyes. "I have seen many battles, but never won one without striking. You have changed how we fight, human." Miran shook his head, smiling softly. "I only showed the way. The city acted. The people thought. That is why we won. Strength alone cannot win. Thinking together, observing, and acting wisely can turn impossible battles into victories." Elder Terran placed a hand on Miran's shoulder. "You have not only saved our city. You have taught us to believe in our own minds. The human has guided us, and now we are stronger than ever before." Miran looked over the city, feeling the pride and hope in every face. Kira had survived the impossible. The people were no longer fearful. They had learned to trust themselves, to act carefully, and to follow guidance that came from thought, not just force. The sun rose over Kira, golden and warm. The city felt alive, full of promise and courage. The machines had returned to the distant hills, but now the people were ready for whatever came next. They had learned that with intelligence, unity, and careful planning, no enemy could overpower them. And as the city celebrated its final stand, Miran knew that the greatest victory was not the defeat of the machines alone. The true victory was the awakening of the people, the realization that humans could guide, protect, and lead, even against impossible odds. Kira had survived, and the people had discovered the power of the mind, the strength of unity, and the hope that came from courage and careful thinking. The battle was over, but the story of the human who changed everything would be remembered forever.